Our Heavenly Father, we praise you because you have wonderfully made us. We understand the way life works, where we come in almost helpless, and there's certain things that are working on their own when we're born, but we just need the care of a mother. And brilliantly, you placed us in the care of mothers and fathers who took care of us and loved on us before we could even return thanks. And they made sacrifices for us. And that picture looks exactly like how you love us. You loved us before we were really even able to be grateful, before we could even recognize the cost of our sin. Chapter 4. This is a great conclusion. We all know the story, but it's just such a sweet, compelling end. Verse 1, meanwhile, Boaz went to the town gate and sat down there, just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here." And they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if not, tell me so I may know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line." So Boaz wants to be doing the right thing. And he brings the man. There's witnesses that are collaborated. Of course, this is culture and practice by the witnesses of the town. The leaders are called in to kind of see that this is going on and that everything's done in the up and up. That's all that is. It's just a way to verify that you're being honest, that you're not meaning anything, to take advantage of another human. Those other men that are gathered in from the elders, those older people that are wise, they're leaders, and they're aware of any kind of, misguided ideas, and they're able to put an end to that. And that's not, obviously, that is not Boaz's intention here. But go ahead, Dan.
The fact that he used 10, I mean, one or two would probably suffice in most people's thinking.
Yes, yes.
But he wanted a number that was just undeniably clear to everybody in the whole town, so that there would be many memories formed in their minds. So
maybe so.
Would always be on the truth and know the truth.
Maybe so. That is.
It's commendable to me that he was that honest.
For sure, his intention is to make sure that there's a person in front of him, and he wants to do what's right in that situation. And if the person in front of him wants to take this spot and wants to take this property and this family, then he, again, as Scott pointed out last week, I think it's correct, even though he might have his heart kind of set right now on this young lady and her mother-in-law. Nevertheless, if the guardian redeemer had said, yes, I'm going to do it, I mean, Boaz would have accepted that and encouraged that, even if there would have been some measure of disappointment because it's just seems like everything that he does has been done. There's no reason for us to suspect that he would suddenly turn here and be like, no, I'm gonna take her over you. We just don't have any action from his character to lead us to that conclusion. So yes, he wants the town elders to be involved, their witness to this transaction. It's the right thing to do because somebody is responsible to her. Somebody needs to. And the fact that Boaz is bringing it to the attention of this guy who is in front of him is also a recognition that he is concerned about what the law says, because he understands that there is a requirement, there is an expectation about this, where you're settling this matter in front of the town community. They play a constant role. They're supposed to play a constant role in the life that's intersected among believers. And that's what you have here. The elders are called in, and he's trying to follow out the order of what is expected according to the law. And at the end there, verse 4, the fella says, okay, I'll redeem it. He's going to do what is expected. But I think the man thinks maybe that it is just an issue of property. And so he's going to hear this, the rest of this detail, and this is going to begin to maybe change his mind. So this is the continued commentary from Boaz in verse 5. So Boaz said, well, on the day that you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead man with his property. And you see the little, it's not significant, but at this, the guardian redeemer said, then I cannot redeem it because it might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot. So there's some way in which he feels like taking that additional responsibility would not be in his best favor. I don't know if he is purely answering that from a financial standpoint. I don't know if he really felt like, hey, I didn't want the burden of these extra ladies or this family that I'm going to have to tend to. Go ahead, Mike. Did you have a comment? I'm sorry. I thought you may have had a comment.
Well, it NIV Study Bible says that it's if that's the only son, is that it would revert over to Elimelech's family instead of his family. So basically, his family line might lose the inheritance rights if he's the only only son left. That would be in Elimelech's line.
So there is a need for them to keep it, obviously, with respect to the family. Boaz is in that family, correct? I mean, he is in the family of Elimelech, but it's just he's separated further than this man who is a little closer in the situation. But he doesn't want to take it. And you can see that there is some reservation why he doesn't want to take it, because he did want it until he found out that there was a package deal. Well, at that
custom then, or why was it a package deal?
the women, because it is my understanding that the women come with, if you take the property, then you have to build up the brother's line. If the brother dies and he doesn't bear children, then if a husband dies and he doesn't bear children, then his brother is supposed to take his wife and bear children for him. So they had some property. They had some it's just like you would think about an old house place here. If you had a neighbor that married, okay, and he lived next to you and he had 5 acres next to you. If you had a neighbor that married and he died before he had any children, all that is thought about is that's his brother would then be responsible to take over and help provide for his family, just the way that we think about
So in other words, if I sell my property, they gotta take me.
Yeah, that might be right. You go with the property. That's right.
Deuteronomy 25.
Go ahead.
Just Deuteronomy 25:5. That's got the. It seems to,
Mhm.
this is what they're talking about.
Where the land burns back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you've
I
got to
think
take
that's a question.
the wood of it.
When, if a brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. That's the connection that Mike is trying to, and that's what I'm saying.
They keep going, and it talks about having to take her.
Yes,
She's part of the deal.
her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her. The first son she bears shall carry on the name of the dead brother. In this case, it's Ruth's husband that we're talking about, so that his name will not be blotted out. However, if a man does not want to marry his brother's wife, she shall go to one of the elders of the town and say, my husband's brother refuses to carry on his brother's name in Israel. He will not fulfill the duty of his brother-in-law to me. Then the elders of the town, similar to the arrangement that we have in a positive way, it appears in Ruth 4. My husband's brother refuses, he will not fulfill. The elders of the town summon him and talk to him. If he persists in saying, I won't marry her, his brother's widow shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, take off one of his sandals, spit in his face, and say, this is what is done to the one who will not build up his brother's line. That it is funny. That man shall be known in Israel as the family of the unsaved. So go ahead, Wyndham.
I think what is important here too is that the nearest one, if he bought it, he doesn't really buy it perpetually. He only buys it until the Jubilee.
Okay.
When it would revert back to that family, and he would be losing it.
So at the end of so many years.
So yeah, right. Whatever money he spent on buying it is really lost to his estate and to his own sons.
Mhm.
And it would revert. And the reason for this is that in Israel, when the land was divided, it was divided perpetually to these particular
Right,
tribes
right.
that be traded
No,
around,
that's right.
and to each family
That's right.
line.
That's right.
And so every Jubilee, the land reverted
Right.
back to the original family
Yes.
lines.
Yes.
And
They even had some questions, Zalaphath or whatever the man's name is, that only had daughters.
yeah,
And the deal was at the end there, it's the end of Deuteronomy, where that is discussed, I believe. And they all have, because he only has daughters, obviously they're going to marry men, but they were not permitted to marry men outside, so the property could not be assumed into by another tribe.
another little thing that comes out about this is that I think this leverage law was only confined to the brothers, but it became a custom in Israel, not only for the nearest brother, but also for the nearest relative, which we see here, he's just a
Yes.
relative.
Yes.
And that became a custom among not only apparently cultural, among all the Arabs. They had the same custom.
Yes.
But that ought to just attest to the wisdom of God.
Mhm.
He's ahead of men 25,000 feet.
Yeah.
In every case, and whatever country you're talking about, God has already provided for people that will have needs and
Yep.
regulations that have to live with each other.
Yep. For sure.
God is just so supremely magnificent in his wisdom. Just, it's holy.
Yes, you're right. You're exactly right. And that's, and the issue of Boaz bringing it to the attention of the Redeemer. Again, it is because there is an acceptance of the responsibility that you're reading about there in Deuteronomy, that somebody be stepping in to take care of this situation and this property and these ladies, yes, and to keep the name. And Boaz is going to say this even in our text here in just a verse or two. We'll see that thought expressed again. So verse 6, the guardian redeemer, no, he says no. So, and then there is this exchange of sandal as a form, as a visual of legalizing a transaction. I mean, you can think of that as like a notary. You know, if you have something notarized, makes it official, a signing at the end, two kids that get married, all they have to do now in Alabama is sign their name. That's it. And somebody notarizes it, boom, that's official. Well, that's all this is. In earlier times in Israel, for the redemption transaction of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was a method of legalizing transactions. So that's just an explanation there to help us understand. So verse 8, the guardian redeemer said, buy it yourself, and he removed his sandal. So that little bit of explanation there in verse 7 explains what would be maybe a little awkward there in verse 8. Well, then Boaz announced to the elders and to all the people who were there, today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilian, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as his wife. In order, here it is. This is the back to Deuteronomy 25. In order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from among his hometown. Today you are witnesses. So he's saying, I am doing what the Lord was wanting to happen in the case where there is a man that dies before he has children. I want to step in there and be what the Lord said in that situation. As I do that, I take Ruth as my wife, and obviously that's going to be inclusive of Naomi, but he takes the property and he's going to build up, and the first son that comes will honor the dead man. Verse 11, the elders and all the people at the gate said, the gate was just where business was done. Things like this happened all the time. The gates are just really a lot more significant than us. We don't really have like maybe we don't have an exact parallel to that, but you've seen ancient gates and how those operate. So they're at the gate, the elders are there, Boaz is there, transaction has been done. Some people additional perhaps are even there. The elders and all the people at the gate say, we are witnesses. Now watch their line of blessing here. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, who Tamar bore to Judah. Okay, that is quite a blessing, isn't it? The people are saying this, and they recognize in the light of the Lord, in the face of the Lord, they want the Lord to bless. This is a situation that has happened. It's been done honorably. It's been done. It's just a good contrast to the period and time of the judges. Go ahead, Wendell.
Mike and Scott might come on this, but it seems like that in Israel, there was kind of I almost want to say a double standard. The property rights to land came through the mothers.
Yes.
Whereas the lineage line comes through the fathers.
So the property would have been based and connected to his mother.
And this goes back, to the probably had the foundation when Moses gave authority to those 7 daughters, but the property come through them. And here it's saying, that the property is coming through, in this case, through Ruth, or through Naomi, through Ruth, the right for the property to revert back to them. But yet, then the lineage of, is through Boaz, through
Yes.
David, and
Right.
then I don't understand that. Do you?
Well,
do
you
y'all
notice
understand?
the blessing covers both parts of that. The blessing, if you go back to what Boaz says, he talks about, I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and so on and so forth. But then the blessing, we are witnesses, may the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house.
That's Ruth talking about.
Right. There's the blessing covers both the women, and then he uses, but you want to talk about completely out of left field, the fact that he uses Perez as the marking point when that young man was born, talking about in an ugly situation, an ugly scenario. Tamar and Judah are his parents, but Judah is ashamed of the very fact of how Perez came into the world, and yet that's who they choose. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it is interesting. It is very much a double standard. If you look at Matthew and you look at Luke, Matthew's genealogy is done one way, Luke is done another about Jesus for that very reason, I personally believe, because they did place value on the women in one line of thinking, and they place value on the men in another line. But ultimately, don't mistake, they were always going to track to the men. The name even meant more than the land, which was, I think goes back to the very comment was made earlier about why this man refused to be the kinsman redeemer and pass it on to Boaz. Ultimately, there was that idea of, it may cost me and my boys our names, and I'm not willing to do that.
Judaism traces through the mother. It's a matrilineal
So if your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. And not that's not Reform Judaism, they'll put the father, but all Judaism it traces through the mother. Orthodox Judaism, it's only the mother.
through.
If your father is Jewish and mother's not, you're not.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a, I mean, it's a great thing to think about and study about. I don't know all the explanations for how that came to be.
Yeah, because Ruth had already married into the family.
She was a Moabite. I mean, she was not an Israelite, certainly not a Jew when she begins. But obviously, with her abandoning her gods and her people and everything else, and she is included here, I mean, she is as much a Jew as anyone else that the Lord ever showed his favor upon.
That's because she would have been counted in genealogy because she married a Jew, tracking the genealogy or the line through the husband.
Yep.
She's counted.
Right.
Whereas if you wanted to start getting into land ownership, they would have had a much harder conversation on their hands because she's not a Jew. So technically she can't even inherit Naomi's
Correct.
money or land or et cetera. So that's, again, I just made the comment back here under my breath that you talk about some tangled threads that you got to work through.
Yeah, this is also a rare case, okay? Ruth is like an exception. But the fact that God is comfortable to thread a Gentile into, and she's not the only one. I mean,
Well, it's probably part of the overall plan of God showing that he really has a love for everyone.
he does. He does. He has a love for everyone. Yeah.
You know,
Because Rahab is included in the same, she is like Ruth in that sense. She left her gods, her people were all destroyed at Jericho, but she was absorbed into Israel, and she too also is in the line of Jesus. So
And these are just the ones that are recorded.
yeah, how many others, right, might be in the overall scheme of God's ultimate redemption?
But this is sufficient. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't need more.
No,
This
No.
alone is sufficient to show God is truly a loving God.
yes,
He's willing to include even more than the Jewish people,
Yeah.
the Gentiles.
Yeah.
He's willing to love us.
that's right. That's right, Frank and then Scott.
Oh, really, the same thing works today. About the same thing. If a man and his wife is together and he passes away, everything goes to his wife
Sure,
without without the paperwork.
that's right. That's right.
Everything goes to her,
That's right. Mhm.
and she's a guardian and leader of everything.
Yeah.
Till she makes a decision to do what she wants to.
Yeah.
And regardless of what religion she is or
Yep,
or
that's
she's
right.
even any religion or
That's right.
whatever.
The living make those decisions. Go ahead.
Well, I couldn't help but think because we're studying Romans on Wednesday night, I
Yep.
couldn't help but think about the fact that this is what Paul's teaching in Romans, that concept of, all the universality of sin, et cetera. But there's also that comment that the Jews should have known.
Mhm.
A simple study of their history would have revealed that God allowed people outside of the Jewish, quote, Jewish heritage into the line. Literally a simple reading of their history would have pointed out people like Ruth, people like Rahab. It would have, that would have been obvious to them, and yet to their detriment, they were obviously obsessed with, we have our father Abraham,
Right.
choosing to ignore their mother Ruth or their mother Rahab.
That's right.
Literally choosing
That's
to
right.
ignore
That's right.
those very people in the
Yep.
in the lineage. It's
Yep.
that obsession with no, we're pure, we're clean. And Paul says, but you should have known.
Right.
You
Right.
can't even look back through your ancestry and find clean. And God wanted it that way.
Yep.
So stop trying to.
Yep. Yeah.
I got Wednesday night.
I got a question. Is this Judah,
Yes,
the same Judah
that's
that,
the same one.
same one?
Yep.
So that to me says something.
Yep, correct, because Judah sleeps with Tamar. We've already been over that, but he sleeps with Tamar. He thinks that she is a prostitute. And she gets pregnant by him, by their exchange. And then when she is found to be pregnant, he's really mad and he's ready to kill her. And she says, oh, I'm pregnant by this guy. Do you recognize these? Remember these? You sent these for payment.
Yeah.
And Judah was embarrassed. It says that he did not sleep with her again. So even though they conceived that, there's twin boys that are born. But that is the one of the kids that we're talking about. There's twins, and we'll talk about it when we go to Genesis chapter 38 in a
Well, and
minute.
then they say, may your house be like one of those twin boys.
Yes, because the Lord is blessing it, and the Lord does. I mean, look at David. David sinned. And see, some of these things are just so very difficult for us to think about. But David sinned with Bathsheba. She was another man's wife. He took her as if she was his own. And because he killed Uriah, the baby that was born to them died. You remember that. But then just as quick as that baby died, next year, they had, and the Lord loved it. The Lord loved a boy that came from David and Bathsheba. He should never love a kid that comes from David and Bathsheba. Well, she was a widow at that point by technicality. Even though it was not good how that happened, she was still a widow. She was able to be married at that point. David was able to be married to her. So the Lord blessed him, and he loved Solomon, and he gave him a blessing because of that. So all this is the same exact setup in this situation between Tamar and Judah. They should not have ever been in the bed together, but they did. And God blesses this line, and that's why this statement is said. And I mean, this is a great line. May your, through the offspring the Lord gives you, but this woman, may your family be like that of Perez, who Tamar bore to Judah. And the Rachel and Leah, I mean, they're wanting a lot of children here for Ruth. And it's just really a great blessing, a great blessing. When
Frank's comment about the women, I read somewhere that the women control most of the wealth in the United States. I guess they have a longer lifespan, they outlive their husband.
isn't that interesting?
Fall to them.
Yep. That's an interesting comment, because it is that way for us. And in our society, things are set up usually where, you know, before somebody dies, they have things arranged so that their property and their belongings, whatever, go to particular people. But that is certainly an interesting idea. And this is the case here. Boaz assumes the women. So Boaz, verse 13, Boaz takes Ruth and she becomes his wife. And he made love to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive. And she gave, I mean, why didn't she have a baby before that? Who knows the answer to those kind of questions? But she does. Why did she and her husband not have children? I don't know.
God's will. Was not God's will.
I mean, you have to think that some of this is the providence of the Lord at work, but here the Lord enables her to conceive, and she gives birth to a son.
Is it kind of like from chapter 1, verse 21? about I went away full, but the Lord brought me back empty. There's
Boy,
somebody-
howdy. Isn't that
she was
great?
empty and now she's full.
Isn't that
Yeah,
great?
I mean, there's a
There is so much drawing a picture of contrast.
contrast between empty and full and empty.
And that is, I mean, when she comes back and calls herself Mara and just feels so bitter and empty. And now here her daughter is going to have a son. And basically Naomi is going to have a son. Because here in her later years, she is going to be able to have a son through Ruth. And that is just, it is powerful. And she is full, and you see that. So the women, they say to Naomi. Now, this is the contrast to that bitter place. Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without. You see that God will step in. God will provide. Isn't that the message of this book? God will provide, and he will. And here was Boaz set up financially, set up lineagely, set up in this right, at the right place to step in when somebody else didn't want to. And he does that, and the Lord blesses him, gives him a baby. The Lord bless you with a garden redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. Oh, isn't that a lovely description? For your daughter-in-law, look at this sweet compliment to Ruth. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and is better than 7 sons has given birth. I mean, that's a good compliment. She is better than sons because of her dedication, because of her commitment, because of her love, because of her consistency, her loyalty. I mean, they are praising her. What would people say about you? That's what you want to, not that you're trying to aim for praise from men, but people will say something about you. And Ruth, man, this is a great statement from her. So Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son. And they named him Obed. Now, he was the father of Jesse. Most of us know that little 3-step. Obed, Jesse, David. Most of us remember that. That is one of the purposes of this book, I believe, is to show the genealogy to David. So this then is the line from Judah through his son Perez. He has other sons. This is the one. Do you remember how that happened? When the twins were born, there was one that stuck his hand out. She's in labor. And one sticks his hand out, and the nurse ties a cord on his hand. And he pulls it back. And then the brother is born. And that brother is Perez. He is the one that is born first. He's actually the physically born first, but he's not the technical first. Zerah is the twin, and he's the one that has the cord on his hand. But Perez is the one that is actually born first. And the brother, see, the brother was coming out. I don't know why that they named these things these ways, but the brother is coming out, and that is deflected, and then Perez comes out. Isn't that interesting? Go ahead, Woody.
This kind of gets us aside just a little bit, but they're liberal. There are those who like to try to make a contradiction here. Because
Yes,
you want to, I think the answer to it is that Perez had a son that he named after his brother.
mm,
The brother was the one that came out first, and it is Hezron. And so the liberal try to point out, well, they made a mistake here because Hezron was the son of Judah.
was the son of Judah.
Was the son of Judah,
Mhm.
and it says here, father of him. But I think it is. It said Perez was the father of Hezron.
Yes,
But I think Perez simply named his son after his brother.
yeah.
So I think there were two Hezron.
Certainly when John is,
Yeah, I think so too.
I kind of jumped back just a little bit, to Genesis 38,
yes, that's right. That's where it happened.
verse, chapter 38, read verse 6.
Mhm.
Genesis 38, verse 6. Well, verse 6 and probably 7.
Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. And then Judah said to Onan, that's his secondborn, sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as the brother-in-law and raise up offspring for your brother. That is what is later fleshed out in Deuteronomy 25, but that spirit is obviously still here. But Onan knew that the child would not be his, so when he slept with her, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from providing an offspring for his brother. And what he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. Yeah, no joking around. The Lord expects somebody to take very seriously
He didn't
the
joke, did he?
responsibilities. Yeah, that's exactly right.
The name Perez means breach, and that's what they say about the baby. Look at the breach you made for yourself.
Right.
It's this similar thing. He fits himself into the conversation.
Yeah.
Because as a baby, he fit himself into the conversation. That's not natural, nor is it human development. That's God involved development in
Yeah.
the story.
The Lord is providing a line here, and it leads to David. And there are liberal critics all over the place.
It's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. I gotta go. We'll talk about them next week. Thank y'all very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, I gotta go.